So, hello and welcome everyone to this webinar for the Department of Electrical Engineering and Electronics at the University of Liverpool. Firstly, our sincere apologies for the technical issues we've had in the last 20 minutes setting this up and having to divert you across to a second link. But we are now ready to go. So I'll introduce myself. My name is Dr. Ian Sandel. I'm one of the admissions tutors for the Department of Electrical Engineering and Electronics at the University of Liverpool. I have a number of my colleagues and some former students here to answer some of your questions today about sort of what electrical engineering and electronics is and what it's like to study at the University of Liverpool. So I'll just take you around our panel first. So Mark, could you just introduce yourself?
Yes, hello, I'm Mark Bowden. I'm an academic in the Department of Electrical Engineering and Electronics, and I guess I'm here because I help coordinate the first year studies for the electrical engineering degrees, and I'm also involved in running the laboratories for first year.
Mooney, could you just introduce and say hello?
Hello everybody, my name is Munira Raja and I'm an academic in the Department of Electrical Engineering and Electronics, and I'm here as the lead representative for the Athena Swan Group, which is our committee looking after the equality, diversity and inclusivity activities in the School of Electrical Engineering, Electronics and Computer Science.
Hi, Joe Feng, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Yeah, so I'm Jeff. I'm the industry program coordinator. I'm also responsible for the employability in general of this department. Okay, so that is me.
Okay, oh, we've also got two of one just graduated student. Nadia, would you like to say hello?
Hi, I'm Nadia and I've just finished my final year studying avionics systems with pilot studies, Bachelor of Engineering at the University of Liverpool.
And last but not least, we have George.
Hi, yeah, I'm George Palin. I'm doing currently my year in industry, going back into my third year soon in October or September, doing electrical electronic engineering, BEng.
Okay, so thanks everyone. So we've had a couple of questions coming in advance, so we'll start with them, and then obviously if you there should be the link to the Google form below in the chat if you'd like to submit questions as we go through. So the first question we had was what degree programs we offer here. So we have 4 degree programs within the university, within the department. We have mechatronics and robotic systems. So that's a degree program aimed at the interface between mechanical engineering and electrical engineering. So it's about making what would be traditionally a mechanical system into an autonomous mechatronic robotic based system. So driverless cars, robotic applications, things like that. So you spend some of your time in mechanical engineering learning the underpinning principles of good solid mechanical design, and you spend time in electrical engineering learning about sensor control, automation, things like that. We have avionic systems, which is what Nadia has just completed her degree in. So that sits at the interface between aerospace engineering and electrical engineering, and is very much about the electronics that are needed to make modern flight possible. So if you think of a picture of a cockpit and you think of all those electronics that sit in front of the pilot, all those sensors, all that communications, all that control, it's very much about making you a specialist in that area. We have a degree in computer science and electronic engineering. So that's very much looking at the interface between that interface level between an electronic system and a computer-based system. So if you think about the amount of things that are now automated, that are controlled, and making good sort of seamless control systems that will allow things to operate. So you may have heard of things like the Internet of Things, where more and more devices are now connected to the internet. They're providing feedback to you. So it's really looking at making you a specialist and an expert in that interface layer. And then we have a degree in electrical and electronic engineering. So that covers the entire span of sort of right the way across from power generation, power distribution on the electrical side, right down to your microcircuits and your microprocessors on the electronic side. And it spans across. And there's options within that degree to sort of specialize in your final year more into the electronic side or more into the electrical side, depending on which you wish. All of our degrees come as either a 3-year bachelor's or a 4-year integrated master's. And there's also an option for all of those to take them with a year in industry and or with some time spent abroad as part of your degree. So that's just a quick overstop tour. Another question we've had in before asks about how practical our course is and how much time you spend in the lab. So I'll pass that over to Mark, I think, to first pass a few comments on that.
Okay, yes. I sort of run the first year laboratories, but also involved in some of the laboratories right across the degrees. The time in which students spend in the labs varies a little bit depending on which program they study, whether you're doing the robotic system, the mechatronics and robotic system, or the avionics, or the electrical engineering electronics. But in first year, it's about 1 day per week. You sort of come in at 9 in the morning, and there's a laboratory exercise which runs for most of the day, and you leave at 4 in the afternoon with a break for lunch. In second year, it's fairly similar. There's a day set aside for you to do laboratory exercises. In first and second year, those exercises are very much electrical and electronics based. Your electrical circuits, setting up circuits, testing circuits. In second year, there's a little bit more variety with some different aspects of electrical engineering involved, but it's still very much sort of circuits based. In some of the other degree programs, in the mechatronics and robotic systems, there are also laboratories that the mechanical engineering department runs, for example. And so there's some extra laboratory work which is done there. And so it's about, I guess, 20% of the time that you spend on the campus is spent in laboratories. It's a fairly important part of all of our degree programs. We think that's one of the Liverpool features, actually, is how much practical work is involved.
Nadia, George, I don't know if either of you want to sort of comment on the amount of time you spent in lab and what you've done in labs during your time.
I mean, as Mark said there, I mean, a lot of our time is very practical. It's one of the reasons that where I joined the University of Liverpool, as compared to a lot of other unis, it was a lot more focused on the practical aspect, which is what I'm more geared to as a person in that kind of an engineering aspect. And I think it is one of the brilliant parts of the degree is being able to actually apply what you kind of learn and more actually seeing it kind of appear in a circuit and actually how it works. So, yeah.
Yeah, and following up from George said as well, because I do avionics systems, I'm involved with the aerospace department as well. So it's kind of nice to get sort of a taste of both sort of departments and the practicals that you do there. I was actually quite nervous myself when I was starting off with practicals, but you don't just go in there without knowing nothing. You have the assistants around to help you, and the lecturers obviously in your lectures will guide you towards what you actually need to do in those practicals. So you won't go in there completely blind. So
thanks. Okay, next question we've had in is how does a year in industry work as part of the degree? So I think I'll first pass that over to Jay Feng to give us the department's view of that, and then as George is just finishing his year in industry, we'll ask him if that matches up to what actually happened. So Jay Feng, could you just talk a little bit about how a year in industry works, how it's structured?
Yes, sure. So for the year in industry, basically you need to enroll in this program, but you don't have to do that in year one. You can do that at any time before the around the Christmas time of year two. So you will need to enroll in a few programs, a few practical training for you to apply for those placements, and you can transfer to that program at any time before then. The program works like this, so you will apply for the placements by yourself. Once you have been offered a place, then you can be formally transformed to our year in industry program. Then you will spend 1 whole year, that is usually 9 to 12 months from the July of the second year until the third year. So you will spend 1 year in the company to do the placement. Then after that, you come back to the university for year 3. And if it's MNG, you come back for the year 3 or year 4. And then that whole year you will be spent in the company with the support from the university. And we try to offer as much flexibility as we could in terms of the format of the placement and also how you will be assessed in that program. So that's the main structure of the program.
Could you just comment, Jay Feng, what kind of companies do people go to a year in industry with? Are they sort of big companies people are going to have heard of?
Yeah, it's variable. There are a number of companies, but I have to say most of them are big companies. Sorry. So such as IBM, BMW, Sellafield, which is its big employer, many other security companies as well. So we there's quite a number of big ones. I think for most of the names you've heard of, you would have our students. Or GE, for example, and many other big companies. So small companies as well, such as Sensor City in our city center. They also employ a few of our students in recent years. Okay.
Great, thanks, Stuart. Yeah, so George, do you want to talk a little bit about where you've been for the last year and what you've been doing for year in industry?
Yeah, so I started off, with the university when I came to university already applying for the year in industry course. And then as you go into your second year, you then start having employability lectures given by someone from the employment department or whatever, to kind of train you up with the skills then to help apply for different placements. So I applied for, I successfully applied and got into Sellafield, which is where I've been working for the past nearly 13 months now, actually. So I started off on like a 12-month thing. And you, as part of it, you're just working as if you are an engineer there. And my experiences have been basically working as everyone else in the department. As you're not treated in the sense of just being photocopied or anything like that. You're doing real work with it. I think that's what I found the most valuable out of it. And then from kind of the university perspective, I've had to do an interim report, which was around Christmas time. And then that followed by a final year report, which I submitted a few months ago, as well as a presentation and like a poster. So that's the kind of, and then that kind of shows the university how you've progressed in your placement and what kind of work you've been doing. But I think the reason I chose the year in industry was purely for the experience. You get a lot of academic knowledge being at university, but I feel you miss out on a lot of the industrial, how a business operates in engineering and how you use your academic knowledge to apply to a job interview. And it allows you to then get potentially onto the graduate scheme coming into the year after once you've gone back. And a lot of the companies are very for that. But I've gained other experiences as well from the year in industry, such as like the IT chartership. I've completed my first level of EngTech, which is your first level of chartership as part of my placement. But it's like these kind of experiences which you don't necessarily get at university, but are really, really useful. So in some ways, I couldn't really recommend the year in industry anymore. It's a fantastic opportunity.
Okay, thanks.
So, yeah.
Mark, Mooney, did you have any sort of comments, experiences from the students we've dealt with that have come back from year in industry? Anything you wanted to add?
Just to follow on what George had said, most of the students who've come back from industry tend to have these additional skills which they learn from industries not necessarily available at the university. But in addition to that, I also wanted to inform that we also have the MEng projects, MEng programs, which also has, in the next academic year, will introduce employability content within that. So you'll have schemes where you can, you do like a Dragon's Den pitch. So it's just sort of to have more employability skills which are more attractive when you start looking for jobs later on. So there's different options for you when you're looking at which programs you want to go into, and also which path you want to get into in order to increase your employability skills as well.
Okay, I can just add one extra thing to that, just because in this past year I supervised a couple of final year students who'd gone through the year in industry program, and I think my experience was typical of what we see in many students, is that the year in industry program, as well as making the student, people like George, making them better engineers, it actually makes them better students as well, because there's more discipline, they understand more the context of what they're studying, and maybe they apply themselves more. And we do see that the third year results for such students are often significantly higher than their first and second year results, just because the experience of working for a year actually makes them much better and gives them a better degree outcome as well as the experience to actually get a better result in the end.
Yeah, that's a really, really good point, actually. And just to come back to what Mooney was saying, even if you don't take a year in industry, there are options such as the MEng project. Quite a few of the final year projects as well have industrial sponsors. So I ran one this year where it was a final year student, but they were working with Jaguar Land Rovers. So again, there's sort of industrial interaction built other ways in your degree as well. It's not just for the year in industry, but the year in industry by itself is a fantastic opportunity that, like George, I would really encourage anyone looking to apply to seriously consider. Okay, another question coming in. Is it difficult being a female student in an electronics department given the high number of male students? So I guess the best person to approach that to first would be Nadia as a female student.
Yeah, so I'm a female student, obviously. Well, I was, and I was in avionics systems, and there were 3 girls, including me. But I didn't really find that there was any sort of disadvantage. I didn't feel, left out at all. Yes, you walked into a lecture hall and it was primarily male dominated, but going into an engineering field, you've got to expect that. But at the same time, it doesn't really affect you at all. If anything, I made really good friends with all of the guys in my course, and George as well, even though he's not on my course, we shared some of the same lectures. And you don't really see the difference, to be honest. I mean, you'll help each other in different ways. You'll end up becoming friends. Like, there's no sort of discrimination against it. But obviously going into an engineering course or an engineering field, you have to be very aware that obviously it is primarily male dominated. So actually doing a degree first and being exposed to that sort of, I might be one of the minorities here, is actually quite good, because then when you move on into the workforce, you don't actually feel as much as a minority. So I didn't find any sort of disadvantage. I quite enjoyed meeting all my friends, and don't see anyone really different, so it's okay.
So obviously, as a department, as engineers, it's something we are acutely aware of, is that there is a lack of female representation. So I'll pass over to Mooney, because she's part of the team looking to sort of try and broaden the number of females and other sort of minority groups in the courses.
Yeah, so to just echo what Nadia just said, obviously being in an engineering area, you tend to have slightly lower proportion of female. But we're not actually much, we are sort of comparable to the national benchmarks in terms of the proportion of female to male students numbers on undergraduate level. But having said that as well, we are constantly looking at new strategies to improve our gender balance within the 2 departments, the computer science and electrical engineering as well. And in addition to that, we try to come up with different schemes and policies to support our female students. So, for instance, we run annually focus groups to get feedback from female students to see how we can support them more. And following on that, we come up with new ideas. So, for instance, we are looking into creating a female mentor network, which will mainly be helpful for female to interact together with not just students, but also female from internally academics, but also external female from industry as well, sort of to interact and learn about the challenges, but also opportunities, etc. So we're constantly trying to improve the experiences of our female students as well. So I don't think there's an issue. I mean, I was a student as well in the same department. And again, I find that over the years, there's been a lot more improvement in terms of the proportions of female when I was a student too. So there's always room for improvement, and we're always striving to obviously come up with new ideas and processes to improve the gender balance. In addition to that, we're also looking at not just addressing gender issues, but also we want to represent other groups which are in minority level, so other underrepresented groups as well. So we're extending our activities, our EDI activities, not to include just gender, but include other EDI topics and other underrepresented groups as well.
Sure, thank you. Anyone else? Any comments they want to add to that? I don't think there's much. Mark?
Oh, I can just add one thing, just on sort of what the numbers are, that we, in first year, we tend to have something like 100 students in first year, and probably the female representation there is about 15 or so, something between 10 to 15, just depending on the year. And so there are small numbers, but it's not one or two. There are other people around.
Thanks, Mark. Okay, so next question I've had is, I haven't studied physics or electronics at A level. Will this disadvantage me if I studied electrical engineering at university? So on a base level, in terms of what we ask for your entry grades, we don't ask specific, the only specific subject requirement we have is maths, and we ask for a second science, but there's a broad range of sciences that can cover. So it can be physics and electronics, it can also be computer science, chemistry, further maths, and a couple of other subjects as well. So in terms of an entrance requirement, it doesn't stop you. I don't know if sort of Mark is first year lab. I don't know if you've got sort of experience as to how students fare depending on the backgrounds.
Yeah, I think that the most important thing is the maths background. The other areas, the physics and electronics, we do introduce them in first year, and the things you need to know are introduced, and you get a chance to study them. If you have some background in them, then obviously it's easier to study and to continue on with that. But we do have students every year who don't have that background. In terms of, particularly in the electronic side, we do have a large number of students with very little or no lab experience. And one of the aims of the first year laboratories, in fact, is to give people the experience they need to actually go through and study electrical circuits and electronics properly in second and third year. And so we don't actually assume knowledge in electronics and practical experience at all. We do, again, people who have that experience find it easier to settle in and to progress through initially, but we don't assume that. We do try and teach it right from the start.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. All our first year courses are very much aimed with, we only expect you to have maths. And a lot of particularly your first term, is trying to get everyone to the same level. So if you've done electronics as A level, you may find certain parts easier. If you've done physics, you may find some other parts easier. If it's further maths or computing, there will be other parts you find easier. So everybody has the bits that they find easier and the bits they find harder. And the first 6 months or so is pretty much trying to get you to that same level. That's certainly what we aim to do, as Mark said. Nadia, George, is that kind of how you found your first years?
Yeah, I mean, I studied at A level. I did I did maths, physics, and I did biology and Italian. So I did a whole variety of things. So I did no electronics, but I did have like a very small amount of electronics in my physics A level. So obviously going into an electrical engineering degree, I wasn't actually exposed in my A levels to that much electronics, but I found that I wasn't at any sort of disadvantage to anyone else who had done electronics at A level. As all the lecturers have said, you do get introduced to the fundamentals of physics and also the fundamentals of electronics. So they kind of build everyone up from base level. Even if maths wasn't particularly your strongest subject at A level as well, you have core maths modules that you will do in first and second year, which really build up the fundamentals of maths. As everyone said already, maths is pretty fundamental, I'd say, in the degree. So you won't be at any disadvantage not doing physics or electronics at A level, because they'll build you up from the beginning. I don't know if George did the same or similar to you.
The best example comes that I did maths, physics, and computer science at A level, and then I did further maths AS level. So it was a bit different from my perspective in the sense that, I mean, as you said, though, you have an introductory maths level. I mean, if you've done the maths before, you do find it relatively easy. I mean, one topic I did learn that a lot of people hadn't was kind of complex numbers and that kind of thing. A lot of people didn't know that, but it was, as you said, it was taught from the very kind of start out. So as I found it a bit more simple in the sense that, because I'd already learned them before, it did go over, and it was quite a good refresher actually on some aspects, definitely. but it geared the more pure maths that I'd done to more electronics. Those bits that were less important at A level that ended up being more important, like complex numbers, and only brushed on, became very important when you came into electronics, which I think was a key thing that I learned. So that's what kind of built up from that.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Yeah.
Thanks, everyone. Okay, another question. Is it possible to spend any of my time studying abroad for my degree? So the straight answer to that is yes. We have a range of schemes from a few maybe short intern period over Easter right up to spending a full year abroad. I don't know if Mark, Mooney, Jay Feng, if you can comment more on the specifics of those.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I can. Yes, I mean, there are some opportunities to study abroad. We do have a year abroad program where students can go to our Chinese sister university and spend a year there studying essentially Chinese cultural studies and various other things and come back. And that is a year in the degree. There are also some short, that's a year in the degree. So you go away and you come back and then study the subsequent year here at Liverpool and continue the degree. There are also some short-term opportunities that are being set up in conjunction with some of the electronics clubs and societies where you can go to for a week to essentially sort of not quite a summer camp type thing, but that kind of interaction with students in other countries. There are, I would guess, the international aspect of studying abroad isn't a main part of many students' degrees, but there are opportunities there if you're interested in that kind of thing.
Thanks. Anyone else got any comments they'd like to add? Please. No, that's okay.
Yes, for me, I think for the EEE industry, it is also possible for you to carry out your placement overseas, other country. So many students would find jobs in their own country, as long as the job is at the degree level. It's usually okay if you can take that overseas. Yeah, that's me.
Thanks, Jeffrey. So another question we've got is, how much computer programming is involved in the course and what languages do you learn? So I can give a brief intro on that first. So you will learn, in your first year, you will learn C as a programming language. That's common on all of our degree programs. That's a module slash double module slash about a sixth of your first year will be spent learning C. And we teach you C because that's quite a structured programming language. You learn how to put for loops together, while loops, and it's very much a formal structure. So once you've mastered C, it's quite easy for you to transfer onto other programming languages. That's the only compulsory programming I believe you do at any points. Mark, can you comment a little bit more on any other programming they may do?
Yes, and so nearly everyone learns C. If you do the computer science electrical engineering degree, then there are opportunities to study other languages as part of the computer science element of that. But everyone in the electrical engineering electronics department will learn C. We also teach essentially a technical programming language called MATLAB. But also, as students go into second year and third year, there are some specialist programming languages that are used to program integrated circuit and processor boards and things like that, which are taught at the same time as you're learning the theory and application of those of that practical area. And so, in first year, there's the broad, very general C programming, which forms the basis of this. But then as you go on, there's some more specialised ones, depending on which options you take as you go through.
Nadia, I don't know, as a student who came in with no sort of formal programming background, how you found sort of computing?
Yeah, so I came in having never done coding ever before in my life. And safe to say, I was a little bit spooked when I saw C. But the way it worked in that module was it was entirely coursework. So I think we had, was it 5 pieces of coursework that you did over the course of the first year? It was a 2-semester module, and basically it built you up from like coding how to like do a little triangle thing all the way up to coding a tic-tac-toe game. Obviously, you know, you have the lecturers to help you, you have your friends to help you. Like I think George helped me quite a bit in that module because he had computer science, obviously had a little bit of an edge to be able to do that. But then when we learnt MATLAB in the second year, for me personally, I found MATLAB just easier, but I'm pretty sure that's entirely because I'd learnt C the year before. So if I hadn't done C, I wouldn't have known how to do MATLAB, and my final year project was entirely in MATLAB. So I'm quite thankful that we did do C, because it is very fundamental, as everyone's already said. And I know, obviously not speaking from experience, but if you choose to do a final year project in software, you might choose to actually go off and learn a programming language yourself if that's something you're interested in or you've found interest in over the years. So you can choose to learn a new language, but I did not. I chose MATLAB, but yeah, I don't know if George had any different experience because he did electrical engineering, so I don't know if it's a bit different.
Yeah, I mean, I think I did the same modules you did from the introduction to C programming. I mean, at school I learned Java, which was a bit different to kind of C, but I'd already done C from like home projects, so it's a bit of a different kind of been into it. So I already knew a lot of the programming module, but I mean, weirdly enough, I actually found it trickier to switch from a programming kind of mindset into programming MATLAB, because it kind of worked a bit differently. But I think the way it kind of works is it really does introduce you at a very basic level and then take you up again. I think having no experience, I mean, there's a few other people I think I know who like didn't have any much programming experience, and then, you know, were doing really well by the end of it, kind of thing. So I think that's probably, yeah.
Thanks, Owen. So we've got one final question, I think, which is, I was wondering what kind of jobs graduates go on to from the department. So first thing on a sort of overall view level is we have a very good record in terms of employability. So over 95% of our students are either in a further training course, a master's or a PhD, or in full-time employment 6 months after graduating. And of those, 90% of those in jobs are in what are classed as managerial or professional jobs. So the kind of jobs you'd expect someone with an engineering degree to have. People go onto a wide range of different careers. So they go with people over the last couple of years that have gone to work for Jaguar Land Rover, for the Atomic Weapons Agency, for IBM, for a whole range of people. I don't know if Mark Mooney, Jay Feng sort of comment on some of the employment paths some of our graduates have gone down.
I can just add a little bit, just to echo what Ian's been saying. There's a very wide range, and the wide range includes essentially startup companies in the Liverpool area, which sometimes students go into, to the large multinational companies like British Aerospace and the power industry, the power suppliers and things like that. There is a whole range of companies, a whole range of job opportunities that you're qualified for when you graduate, and our graduates go to the whole range of them, I think.
So, Feng, is anything you wanted to add in terms of graduate destinations or anything?
Yes, I think you will have a strong support from our employability and career officer. They offer a range of job opportunities. You can attend the the career studio, so they will get you trained, and the company can be big companies across the world or the country. Some are local companies, and typically when we look for placements, for example, usually we have around 20 to 30 students in the year. In the every year we will receive typically more than 200 vacancies, so that the student can choose from. So in terms of employability in our department, I think it's more or less we are privileged. We usually have more chances than the students, so which is good news for most of us. For graduation, again, taking EEE industry, for example, more than half, I think nearly 2/3 of students will be offered a position by their placement employer. Maybe half of them would accept it, and another people will try to find other jobs. But I think in terms of employability, our department is doing very well. That's from me.
Yeah, that's great.
So just to echo further what Joffrey and Mark said, is the university has a career hub where students can take this opportunity to get advice in terms of writing reports, but also finding potential employers. But in addition to that, what I wanted to add was that we tend to try and support students from the very early on in year one, for instance, through our tutorial schemes, where we try to encourage students to start looking at their CV. If they've never prepared one, we support them in preparing one. So it's one of our tutorial schemes we do to support them and grow in terms of looking at or trying to start up thinking about their career. So setting up their CVs, encouraging them to do some sum-up work, etc., etc. So we try sort of and support, encourage students from very first year they start on in terms of thinking about the end goal in getting employed.
Yeah, that's a really good point actually from Mooney, because even in terms of some of the lab work and the project work that students do, we try and formulate it in such a way that it mirrors what would happen in a workplace. So some of the projects that students undertake, we set it where they're set a goal, and we let them structure that goal. We get them working in project teams with project managers and people having different responsibilities to, again, embed some experience as to how the world of work will really work, to give them some vital skills there. I don't know if George or Nadia had any final comments on sort of some of those things that we've tried to teach you.
I mean, I said I'd been in your industry, and a lot of the employability things. I mean, I've been to the careers hub loads of times when I was trying to apply for different placements and whatnot, and it was extremely helpful getting my CV and study skills. And one thing I particularly struggled with was this whole kind of psychometric test thing, online things, and the careers hub were very useful with that. And there's been loads of different aspects like that that's helped me along, even just getting into my placements and that, which has been really helpful. And it starts from the beginning. I remember in first year, my academic advisor doing like CV things and bits like that, which was but it was really helpful overall.
Yeah, I was just saying what George said, actually, just echoing from that, the tutorials that the university hold for you in your, I believe it was my second year primarily, where I would go to these tutorials, and there'd be people from different companies there. I remember having a talk very vividly actually about 5G networking, which was really interesting actually, and just to give sort of maybe a different perspective on this, like even if you don't want to go into engineering, it's very easy to go into other things, because engineering is classed as a very, very difficult and prestigious degree. So for someone else who perhaps wanted to do something a little bit different, for myself, for instance, I want to go into commercial airline piloting, potentially even RAF. So by having been in the air squadron at university, which I found out through my department, actually, through some friends there, you're actually exposed to a lot of different things that you might not initially know about. So I'd say definitely keep your eye out for the opportunities that arise that might not actually be entirely visible at first.
Okay. Thanks, everyone. So that sort of brings us to the end of our time. Oh, sorry, Joe. Go ahead, Joe.
So I just want to just to say that we do offer, as Moni said, we do offer the contents from year 1 to year 2 to year 3 and year 4 for MNG student. For year 1, you can learn how to write your CV and what a job would look like. For year 2, we would have departmental seminars. We try to invite speakers from the industry to give us some very interesting, very good talks on different topics. And on year 3, you have the management module. So all these one you should be able to be opposed to most of the industry partners, and many people would contact them and eventually find a job in the companies from the people they have met during these modules or courses or seminars or job fairs, etc. And also we have a very strong career service department. There are more than 10 people in the team, and they're still recruiting. Yeah, so they are very helpful. You can almost drop in at any time. They will give you any support you need. And for a job interview, they can even run a mock interview for you. They are very supportive and helpful. And that's it.
Thanks, Rafi. So yeah, that brings us about the end of the webinar now. So I hope you found it informative and it's told you a bit more about the department. Apologies again for our technical glitches at the start. Please do, if you're interested, on our YouTube channel, we have lots of videos here about the courses in the department, and there's also lots of information on our web pages I'd encourage you to look at. And yeah, good luck in your future studies, and I hope a few of you will consider Liverpool as a potential destination for a degree. Thank you.